You ever wish that your budget were just a little bit bigger at Christmas time so you could go to the stores and buy all that fun decor or really neat Christmas gifts? Well, sometimes that's just not reality, but the answer might be sitting right in your local thrift store. Hi, I'm Rita Joy, and I'm a blogger at harbourbreezehome.com. Today I'm joining another group of DIY bloggers for a thrift store challenge. I chose this very wildly painted canvas for only $1. And come along with me and we'll transform it into some fun, beautiful Christmas decor. Since the canvas had thick paint with ridges, I sanded it well with a piece of sandpaper. The main coat of paint is by Folk Art, and it was really thick, so I added water and stirred it well until it was the right consistency. To begin painting, I dipped my brush in the paint and used a technique I call slip-slapping it on. I just paint it back and forth in an X pattern until you get the whole piece covered really well. I wanted to try a technique that built up the paint in layers and made it look rough and rustic, like an old farmhouse look. In order to do that, I painted it in coats. So the second coat I put on after the first coat was slightly tacky. I used a big fat round brush, dipped it in the paint, and just pounced it all over the canvas until it was well covered. Once one layer was dry, I would alternate techniques. So after the stippling section, I'd go back and do the slip slap technique, the X's back and forth. And I used a blow dryer to speed up the drying process in between. I kept building up the layers between crisscross and pouncing until it was the texture that appeared to look well worn and rustic. Once the texture was just the way I wanted it, I got a nice dark cocoa brown color and a clean round brush and put just a little bit of paint on it. I used a newspaper to take the excess off and then just lightly pounced around the whole edge to give it a bit of shading. Now don't panic, it's going to look really dark at the beginning, but you can soften it with the white brush afterwards. I used the same white brush that I used to build up the texture on the main part of the canvas, and I just added little bits of white until it softened up the edge to the right shading that I wanted it to be. And at the very end, I kind of smoothed it out slightly by using the same X technique that I did at the beginning. The shading gives the canvas a little bit of dimension and makes it look more rustic, and it also adds a little bit of interest if it's going to be put on a white wall. You can just keep building up, making it lighter and darker as you like it until it looks just the way you want. Once the background of the canvas was dry, I placed my largest round object I could find, which was a dishpan, and drew a circle with a pencil around it so that it would be my wreath circle form. To paint the wreath, I used acrylic paint in the color black green. And to paint a fine line with a paintbrush, I first dipped my liner paintbrush in water and thinned down the paint until it was the consistency of ink. Then, holding the paintbrush straight up, I lightly press down and follow the pencil mark that I used drawing around the dishpan. I was nervous to paint the branches freehand, but decided to go for it. I thinned the paint out the same way that I did when I painted the wreath form, and then just going in the same direction, I just made wispy branches going up. Unfortunately, my head is in the way for almost all of that painting process, but you can get the idea. Just keep going in the same direction and just make wispy little branches until you're all the way around. Once the wreath branches were all finished, I used a color of acrylic paint called cranberry wine to add a few little berries to the wreath form. I dipped the end of a pencil in the cap of the cranberry wine paint and then just gently dabbed little dots around the wreath as if it were berries. I printed the word Noel on a piece of printer paper and taped it on in the center of the wreath with Scotch tape. Then I positioned graphite paper underneath. Then using a stylus, I traced around the word. You could also use a pencil if you don't have a stylus. Once you have the word all traced out, you can use a Sharpie marker to fill it in or a paintbrush like I did. I used the same technique of thinning down the paint with water like ink and then gently pressing down on the thinner strokes and harder on the thicker strokes so that you get the thin and thick lines. We did it! We turned a $1 canvas from the thrift store into this. So if you are frustrated by your Christmas budget, head to your thrift store. You might find a treasure waiting for you there. Thanks for stopping by today. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more new movies when they come. And head over to my blog if you want to see more projects.